And I think, cracks knuckles. Methinks a manifesto is in order. Seems like the puppet master Hasan has been pulling your strings as well, sir. I'll have you know, I'm doing a compilation video of all the many different instances where your vibes were off. Die a little bit. Let's look at some fun shit. Apparently, what part of this live stream do they talk about debates?
And I do think it's important sometimes to open things a little bit and realize that people that we looked up to or thought were interesting or important were not good. Irish philosopher to be hallucinogenic substances, you know. But I did that. 1,000 hate former president Donald Trump to say there's no joy on the left. But you know, there's some evidence to that. But what we look into, we talk about some fun philosophy, and it is this idea that, you know, pursuing truth, justice, goodness, and beauty is not necessarily always a fun or easy or happy journey, but there is a satisfaction, not a satisfaction, a meaning, a purpose, a joy that comes through seeking out the truth that is way better than a satisfaction that comes from accepting the world as it is. If that got you a little bit hard, then you're going to like the video that comes out on Friday. In the meantime, as we approach our 10th anniversary, I would love us to get to 1,000 patrons. I did say this on Twitter, so it's legal.
This is Wisecrack going live and talking about
and it's a series called "Don't Put That in the Video." Yeah. Let me know, and we'll do the old 3, 2, 1. Just a 30-second clip of a 5-minute video where producer Olivia gets outtakes from things I say when we film that are way as you got to be. Track Patreon.
Still shilling the Patreon.
Chat, the best gang on the internet. And today's main topic is the question: is debate useful? Now, we all know as people that spend time on the internet, on spaces like YouTube and Twitter, that there's a whole subculture, not even a subculture, a whole culture of debate. People whose entire careers these days are debating ideas. And for many of us, this can be an interesting way into exploring new ideas. It can be a mechanism by which our own assumptions are challenged or pushed. And a lot of us, I wasn't one of these people, but a lot of people do debate in high school and college. And it's a way that they, you know, get smart, get good at argumentation, get good at pointing out the flaws in others' logic, things of that nature. So, you know, there's value in debate. And of course, one of my interests in debate is that it's at the heart of the philosophical tradition, right? People have been debating for a very long time. And a lot of early text in philosophy are not just, you know, dude sits in a room and writes stuff. They are the recounting of conversations and dialogues that took place. So, you know, we go back to Plato. In particular, we go to Socrates and Plato's Socrates. And all those texts, if you've ever read them in like an intro to philosophy class, they're just conversations. They're back and forths. Now, the reason they were back and forths is because the idea is that when we explore ideas collectively, when we participate in dialogue, we're able to go further. We're able to push each other. If you think about it in terms of, you know, I don't know if we got any jazz heads in the chat, but think about improvisational music, like jazz music. It's the combination of instruments doing different things and having different POVs that pushes things in new directions. It creates something bigger than the individual thing. For any of us who've ever participated in creative projects, we know that working together on something can often help us get further. So the thing that got us thinking here is there is a interview, and we'll go in reverse order here. We're first going to watch the reaction to an interview, and then we'll watch the thing itself. That sort of made, let me see this 1 second, that sort of made things go viral this week. And it is a clip, and we have it, I'm sure Henry will get that pulled up, and we'll do our little countdown to watch it. This is posted by Slushy. It is a clip from a Destiny stream. He's watching a Hasan Piker interview, an interview that we will look at some of later, and he reacts to some comments that Hasan Piker makes about debate. So we're going to check that clip out right now using our high-tech countdown system. Okay, so we're going to go 3, 2, one.
Debate and like how stupid it was.
Yeah, well, that's the thing. Like, debates are just purely for entertainment. I think it can have an educational component to it for sure, but overall, it's not about like whose facts are solid. It's more so about who says them in a more solid way, and also it's the theatrics. It's a good way to maybe bring some people over to your side in the margins, but overall, it's not activism. It's not doing something meaningful. It's not even like,
it's not activism or doing something meaningful, like convincing people you're correct about a thing. By the way, that's all of politics, you fucking retard, right? Like if you look at the founding of the country, if you look at like any big like people arguing in Congress over amendments that you're trying to pass, like the founding fathers, like literally writing fucking pamphlets and shit to try to debate people into like, hey, here's why you should support the federalization of our fucking country. Here's why you should support, like writing pamphlets and shit. The Federalist Papers, writing pamphlets, it's literally debating people on fucking politics. Here's my political opinion. Here's why I think it's right. Please support it so we have a fucking country. No, debate isn't real politics. What real politics actually is me driving home from Starbucks in my $300,000 car so that I can get in my $3 million house so that I can come into my $5,000 or $50,000 or $150,000 a month.
Just a normal reaction to someone saying something objectively true, by the way, which is that debates can have some educational components, but ultimately it's about whose side has better rhetoric and not actually about the facts, which is precisely why someone like Ben Shapiro could technically own someone who is infinitely more knowledgeable on any matter that they're speaking of in the marketplace of ideas. Shapiro is correct. And debate itself also usually creates a very hostile environment that is just simply there for the blood sport. Okay? There's nothing funnier than watching him fucking lose his mind over a relatively understandable, relatively reasonable statement while simultaneously comparing himself to the founding fathers, when in fact the only comparison to the founding fathers was probably his proclivity to use the N-word, you know, and the energy that comes from that. So don't know what he's going on about.
Month job to tell you about why socialism is the best thing ever. Like that's
Okay. Well, that was something. Here's always with producer Henry. Henry, I'm curious. Your initial reaction to, I guess, Hasan Piker's comments and then Destiny's reaction.
Why was he listening to it at double speed or like 1.5 speed? Like
he was, yeah.
Yeah. It's just, what does he need it to match his own like pace and tone as far as like rushing through and speeding? This whole thing's just extremely weird and cringe to me because he's very fixated on but the whole point is I'm fucking right, and then he starts getting mad about like all the price tags on Hasan's things, and I don't know. I don't believe Destiny really has any first principles, and he's pretty narcissistic. So this was like, Jesus, I expected this, but just to hear it and see it, like, ouch.
True.
Yeah, it's interesting that Destiny makes this connection between debate and I think he said like the Federalist Papers, and he talked about Congress and government and the way in which debate leads to direct politics and forms of activism.
Yeah, he's equating what he's doing with like the writing of the Federalist Papers, but like the Federalist Papers were written by people who were like participants in government at the time, like who were also like actually acting on enacting legislation or like writing the law. It wasn't like on the internet you can be this hyper removed voyeur to the whole process and just be arguing from afar. Like it's a completely different like technological context than when like pamphlets were the main way information was spread.
Yeah, and I do think as well that there's a pretty marked difference between streamers debating, and I'm just repeating what Henry just said, and politicians sitting in a room hashing out ideas as they form the underlying logic of a government or a political philosophy. I don't doubt that when, for example,
this is so funny. That guy is a debate guy and then goes straight to an ad hominem as a response. Yeah. Another funny thing that this dude, Pyotr Kropotkin, noticed.
When Marx and Engels were sitting around, when there was
Mr. Breadbook himself watching Wisecrack. That's crazy.
Sitting around with workers in pubs in London talking about ideas. I'm sure that debate happened. But I think there's maybe a difference in what they're talking about here. But to be, we want to be fair. We want to be balanced, want to be grounded. FunGPT brings up founding fathers, finding the 14 fathers. For anyone who doesn't regularly listen to the show, just so you know, it's canon that I have 14 dads. But we'll take a look at the interview itself, where these comments come from. I'm going to fast forward to the 30-minute mark, and I have the transcript pulled up as well. So I think you said, Henry, around 30 minutes is when they start talking about the drama stuff. Great. Now this is a interview from a Wired podcast with Hasan Piker and McKenna Kelly and Leah Feiger. Fun fact, Leah Feiger is my cousin-in-law. I want to give credit where credit is due.
What credit? Credit that they married into your family? That's such a funny way to reveal that. D is using the fallacy of equivocation. You weren't using the word debate in the sense of discourse surrounding ideas. Hasan meant the internet blood sport of debate streamers that are making entertainment for midwit fail sons. Yeah. Like, I'm not saying no discourse should ever occur, of course. But ultimately it doesn't fucking matter, because all of the discourse online is simply about the aesthetics and simply about the drama in and of itself, which moves you away from actually caring about the issues.
I do have, okay, I was just given Leah Feiger's number. Probably won't be able to get her on right now. But maybe in the future, we'll see if Leah Feiger from Wired will come on and talk to us. So hopefully this is about the point where I have it pulled up here. So it was a wide-ranging interview. It's from the Politics Lab podcast. You guys can go check out the full thing for yourself. But, you know, we want to listen to Piker's comments here on drama and debate and, you know, see if there's something that was missed in the clip that went viral and kind of see what his point is. As always, please, whether you're listening to this live or after the fact, you know, jump in. And listen, we're not upsetting anyone here today. We're just here as objective, apolitical observers to see what's happening. So I'm going to start this interview right now, and we'll pause throughout as necessary.
Organizations as well, including like Heal Palestine. So like we're trying to look for charities on the ground that are actively working on the ground right now.
Talking about other creators, there is a lot of drama on Twitch, and
yes,
I'm curious, you know, do you get stuck in it?
I will entertain drama from time to time, specifically because
what a way to put it.
Yeah, I mean, specifically because like I am human after all. I am weak, and also because I think that that's like what a lot of people in the margins, that's what they care about. They care about the drama. So I'll use that as a launching point, as a jump off point to like go back to more serious news coverage. So like, you know, I bring in the eyeballs for playing video games, or I bring in the eyeballs of the collaboration, and then I try to refocus their interest on something that's like genuinely important. And for every, you know, 3,000 people that come in just for the drama, if 500 stick around to hear my coverage on what's going on in Rafah, right? And then that's great. That's what I'm trying to do. The reason why I'm trying to grow always isn't necessarily because like I'm on my Sigma grind shit. I'm always trying to fucking max out on my revenue. I'm rev maxing. Like, no, it's also because like I want to bring awareness to certain causes and try to instill some.
Why is everybody throwing up copiums for fucking video games? Like, what the fuck? I play video games all the time. What are we talking about? It is you who is throwing up a copium that doesn't actually watch me play video games. Shut the fuck up, chatters.
Some charitability in a broader audience. That
I mean, that's like an interesting idea there. We'll keep going, but the idea that Hasan Piker is saying that he instrumentalizes both drama and the desire for consuming content around drama to bring people into broader conversations they might not be privy to otherwise. That sounds fair. You know, I'm not mad at that. We'll keep watching now, you know, like it if you're here.
We'll then listen to what I have to say on certain issues instead of going, oh, I hate that guy. That guy's like a socialist with a nice car. Fuck that guy.
So turning these like dramatic moments and like beefs with other creators into teaching moments for your audience.
I try to, yeah. Like the last round of this was like so laughable to have this conversation like with adults, but
Are we bringing up Destiny? Is that what
yeah, I was about to say like
And I just want to note the name Destiny was said by a host of a podcast that we are listening to. That's who brought
I wasn't going to name names.
yeah, no, there's a content creator who like loves debating, doesn't really care about any of the things that he debates about, but like he will assume like ridiculous stances, ridiculous positions. He's relatively skilled in rhetoric, not necessarily very knowledgeable on the issues, but rhetoric goes a very long way in debates. But beyond that, this dude is very edgy. Loves saying gamer words, the N-word specifically.
Okay, so let's pause there for a second. So, you know, Hasan just said that there's a kind of creator who loves debating, doesn't really care about any of the things that he debates about, and is relatively skilled in rhetoric. I think it's really interesting. I think we can learn something about this, and I know a lot of us know this history, but you know, we look back in the history of philosophy, especially Greek philosophy, you see a distinction between, let's say, like a Socratic figure, right? And what marks a Socratic figure, or literally Socrates followers, Plato's students, was an underlying motivation for knowledge and wisdom. In particular, an underlying motive for knowledge of oneself and understanding oneself such that they can understand the world around them and seeking out ideas like truth and justice. And of course, a knowledge of their fundamental ignorance. You see this in all those dialogues. Now, there was another type of person operating in that context, the sophists. You know, here like sophistry. And these are people who are skilled in rhetoric as an art, who are good at giving convincing speeches. But these are often people whose aim or goal wasn't self-interrogation and external interrogation about wisdom, truth, beauty, meaning. The motivation was currying favor, being on the side of the politicians, making money, convincing people to follow your ideological program, or just getting attention, right? So I think that when we think about debate and rhetoric, one of the things I think about is, you know, what is the motive for those things? And here, at least, Hasan Piker is describing someone who debates because they love debating, debates because they're skilled at rhetoric, not because they are knowledgeable, not because they care about those things. And I think this is important. And I do think, we'll talk about this more, when it comes to debate, I always think the first thing you have to ask, or at least the first thing I would ask myself is, does this person care about the thing they're speaking on? Do they have an invested, emotional, or like in the Greek sense, pathetic, pathos-based interest in the thing? Or is this just like a sport or a game for them? You know, and whether that's someone debating political ideas, debating their favorite games, debating music, people who love the thing are always going to be more interesting, and people that have a humility and are willing to interrogate themselves, always going to be more interesting. And of course, Hasan brings up that a lot of these people, one person in particular, loves saying gamer words, the N-word specifically. And you know, we don't have politics or stances on Wisecrack Live, but Henry, are we comfortable in agreeing that white people just don't get to say the N-word ever?
Yeah, I think we are. Yeah.
Oh shit, dude! It's time. It's time to do another fucking It's time to do another sequence. We have to fucking come after him now. How dare he say that? I don't know how you manage seeing comments like this on articles about you. Stay strong, brother. Now, I am going to give this person, I'm going to tell this person, congratulations for trying and yet still failing to debate me at the top of the hour. Why will I congratulate you? Because I know that that is actually not just any normal comment under the Wired.com article, but instead a top of the hour ad break debate. However, I will congratulate you and I will tell you, at least you tried. At least you tried. Good try. You're fucking cooked nonetheless. Don't come at me with that. I'm ready. I'm ready. But are you ready for the top of the hour ad break? Because at the top of the hour, there's a 3-minute ad break regardless, unless you're subscribed. So get ready for the top of the hour ad break by subscribing for $5 or for free with the Twitch Prime. Here's the 3-minute ad break now. Dude. I feel like D does debate things he cares about. He really cares about being able to say the N-word. Yeah, that's true.
Great. So yeah, I think that, you know, you just don't say the N-word, guys. Just don't. Just don't. Even if, yeah, never mind. So go ahead. I feel like you're about to say something.
Oh no, I don't. I was gonna just bring up the same thing. Like even in stuff where people cite it as an excuse to say the N-word, like Blazing Saddles, like the bad guys are the ones saying the word in Blazing Saddles, and they're portrayed as complete fucking idiots. So like even within the context of like whenever people try to justify it, just don't try. Don't.
Yeah, and I think that's the thing too. Like if someone who presents themselves as an intellect or a rhetorician or a debater, you just ask yourself, if someone takes the time to try to intellectually justify using the N-word as someone who is not a black person, what is the motive? Right? Like what would be the self-interrogative or externally interrogative principle? What would be the seeking of wisdom? What would be the teleology of that desire other than A, it's dank to be edgy, or B, like getting off on transgression or something like that? You know, and there is a way, of course, that one could like, you can do a thing where you rhetorically like break down logic and break down language such that technically it's okay when I say this word, but then that completely, in this case, obfuscates the idea that that word is connected to a history and a context, and that that word has a very effective, particular political oppressive meaning in a community of people that you are not a member of. Okay, let's go back to the Wired interview. We're not here to express opinions. We're just seeing what is on podcast.
Recently, I feel like that happened recently.
It happened like 2 weeks ago where he said the N-word on a podcast.
In 2024. And we have people getting really upset about the word cracker.
Yes, which is really funny because like that is.
I'm gonna pause real quick. I don't know if any of you guys probably know this. I didn't catch up on this till recently. That then the response to in this debate, it went from like it's okay for white people to say the N-word, but then cracker is hate speech. It's not.
Definitely a very like reactionary aspect of the game.
Wait a minute. This guy, when I think, cracks knuckles. Methinks a manifesto is in order. Seems like the puppet master Hasan has been pulling your strings as well, sir. I'll have you know, I'm doing a compilation video of all the many different instances where your vibes were off.
Fortunately.
Yeah, I mean, the power dynamics there are questionable at best.
Yeah, and it's been going on. It's been going on for like the past like 5-6 days now where everyone's like, yeah, you can't, anti-white slurs are unacceptable. What do you mean? Like, you don't care about anti-white racism. And I use that as an opportunity to try to explain to people like the etymology of the word and like the power dynamics and the history of chattel slavery. So it's not just like drama per se. It's not just me being like, that guy says the N-word. You're listening to a guy who says the N-word and I don't hear you criticizing him saying the N-word. You left that shit off, but then you fucking spend a ridiculous amount of time talking about how dangerous it is to make anti-white racism permissible. I mean, all three of us are white in this room. This is laughable, right? It's a laughable thing to be like, someone called me a cracker. Oh no.
I've been called so many worse things.
I'm curious in the chat, or if anyone listening has opinions on being called cracker. As someone's from Florida, there was, you know, the Florida cracker thing was a thing.
Florida
so
crackers.
Someone in the chat, SciComm, so good afternoon, incredibly coincidental you're talking about this, is I'll be in a debate with the D character tomorrow about whether online debates matter. Send us the link to that. SciComm. That's interesting. That is interesting. Bingo Bear says, I don't think anyone white feels bad if someone uses anti-white slurs. I do not feel bad. If you see me in the streets please use an anti-white slur at me and be creative with it. Let's get back.
Exactly, right? And it's like it's so obvious what's going on, but I do think that a lot of people get duped. Like good-natured people that have some biases get duped into like reactionary framing on that issue. It's like bullying. It's wrong. It's bad, sure, but it's like when you make that comparison, when you flatten it out and say like this is all bigotry and it's all unacceptable, and the people saying that are literally also saying the N-word simultaneously, I'm like, well, you don't think that kind of bigotry is unacceptable at all? Kind of seems like you're making this a talking point because you want to expose hypocrisy where no such hypocrisy exists. So that's, I try to use that as a teachable moment.
We're going to listen a little more. He gets back around to some of the comments on debate.
Other people who listen.
Who are the other streamers that you do like that are focusing on politics coverage right now and doing it well?
There's a lot of great people. You have Sean the Black, Frogan, Caroline Kwan, Central Committee. There are a lot of like Twitch streamers specifically that also do political coverage. Carter's another one. Gremlo. So there are definitely content creators that are doing this sort of thing. But beyond that, I would say, in the YouTube space, there's a lot of essayists that are great. They write a lot of YouTube essays. They do a lot of YouTube commentary. They're great. There's a lot of great people overall. None of them engage in debates, which is great. I hate people.
Only
like,
for you. Yeah.
No, I mean, I
actually
do
spoke to
debates
you in 2021 about the Sam Cedar Stephen Crowder debate and like how stupid it was.
Yeah.
I don't know if anyone remembers this. Were you around for the Sam Cedar Stephen Crowder debate, Henry?
I vaguely remember, didn't like Ethan Klein surprise Stephen Crowder with Sam Cedar, and then like he ran off.
Yeah. It was not great. It was not great.
Well, that's the thing. Like debates are just purely for entertainment. I think it can have an.
And then just note right here, this is the part of his comments that Destiny reacted to in particular. So the first thing he just said was debates are just purely for entertainment. And I mean, I do think, and we'll listen to the rest of his comments and then we'll talk about this a little bit more. But I think we have to ask the question as well, when a debate takes place, what is the context for the debate? What is the goal of that debate in maybe a more material sense? Because, for example, I've been at academic conferences before where there's a debate. And maybe it's a panel of people and they're discussing a book and they're debating that book. Or I've given papers before when I used to be an academic where there would be a respondent. And in that room, at that setting, I would say it was always one of two things happening. Either one, I would give a talk or someone else would give a talk and I'd respond. And that person would respond because they shared an interest in interrogating the meaning of a text.
Chatters mad have been looking down and not reading their comments when their comments are literally, can we pet Kaya now?
Or an idea, and maybe they disagreed with me, or maybe they wanted to push me on some ideas. That's what happens most of the time. Occasionally, you would have that person in the academic context who wanted to use that as an opportunity to say, look at me, I'm the biggest boy, I deserve all the treats. But that's, not as common. But some of these debates that happen now, we have to ask ourselves, like, they're happening on platforms that are designed to grab our attention, to get clicks. They're monetized. They're people trying to sell us things. So I think to act as if a lot of the modern online debates weren't at least, if not purely, at least in part or large part for entertainment, seems disingenuous. We'll listen to the rest of Piker's comments.
It's an educational component for sure, but overall, it's not about like whose facts are solid. It's more so about who says them in a more solid way, and also it's the theatrics. It's a good way to maybe bring some people over to your side in the margins, but overall, it's not activism. It's not doing something meaningful. It's not even like genuinely learning about an issue. It's more so learning the talking points.
Which honestly,
so that's the end of the interview. There's a couple other comments there. Again, that's on Wired. Shout out to cousin-in-law Leah Feiger at Wired. It did that. So, I'm going to mention one thing from the chat and we'll get back to that. Amcon Psycom said, my position in tomorrow's debate is that online debates are typically entertaining sophistry. They're more for the entertainment of an audience than an attempt to convince, much less to find truth. And again, to look back at Piker's comments, he says, it's not about whose facts are solid. It's more about who says them in a more solid way in the theatrics. It's a good way to maybe bring some people over to your side in the margins, but overall, it's not activism. It's not doing something meaningful. It's not even genuinely learning about an issue. It's more so learning the talking points. Henry, I want to tag you in for a second. Do you have thoughts on this?
The reciting the talking points, it's about like, putting on the aesthetic of like how to best make it look cool. How do I, within this constraint of conversation, like make my thing look like the most aggressive and boastful? I'm thinking back to how he jumped immediately to the founding fathers as his reference for what he's doing, and it speaks to me of just like where his head is at as far as like where he wants like the performance of being as prestigious as the founding fathers, or is like integral to the importance of like national cultural doctrine as the founding fathers. It's wanting that skin more than it is like digging into it.
Yeah, I mean, it makes you think. A couple weeks ago on stream, you can go back and check this out if you guys missed it. We talked about the Kendrick Lamar and Drake beef, and some of what happens in the context of online debate just reminds me more of rap beef in terms of like who's the loudest, who says the craziest thing, who makes you.
You had a very honest and accurate answer. No, that's precisely the reason why he fucking lost his mind and had like, he was just like spitting on his fucking camera with anger.
Say, oh shit, and that sort of stuff. Because I don't think, when some of the big online debaters, whenever I force myself to watch these things, it's a lot of yelling, it's a lot of name calling, it's a lot of aggressive emotion, and there's not a lot. I mean, and we'll talk more about this because in a second we're gonna have our buddy.
He had no fucking arguments, which is why he immediately was like, "You have a nice car. You have a nice car, and you have a nice house. I hate it." Okay, thanks, man.
It rings a little bit of kayfabe, even from wrestling sometimes, where people seem like they are just like they're all in on it because they know that it's going to benefit them all in terms of their ability to produce content. I do agree that Kendrick had more impressive arguments when it came into that. Beatmaster, we're not avoiding Vosh. I'm not as knowledgeable on the depth of the debate space because some of that stuff makes me, I don't know, want to take a cold bath and too many edibles. But I think the big thing here, and a couple things I'm at least struck by, is, the underlying motive of these debates. What are we trying to do? I am fairly unconvinced that the type of debates that we see online are having material social and political effects. I do believe that there are instances in which watching those debates might expose people to newer, different ideas. Sometimes those ideas are good. Sometimes they might be radicalizing ideas, which are not so great. But I do not believe in my heart of hearts, and there's a little bit of projection here, that many of these debatemen, they're mostly men, I do not believe their motive is Socratic. And by that I mean, I do not think they are attempting to interrogate themselves and the world around them with the overall purpose of leading others towards a sense of truth and wisdom. And I'm not going to get too into this, but I had this pulled up. Let me see if I can find it real quick. So there's go ahead.
Oh, something you're bringing to mind to me is I had friends who, they had their political awakenings in their 20s and they became bigger political participants. And I think stuff like Destiny and that particular flavor of debating just kind of turns people off in general. Like in a wider swath, I think some people just like look at that and that's what they see.
They either get turned off from it completely or they get really invested. And unfortunately for all of us, it is absolutely the worst kinds of people leaning into their absolute worst opinions. There's a lot of people that enjoy that kind of content. Like they love watching Conquest. And it sucks because those people are unimaginably malleable and can be swayed and don't necessarily have like a real they don't really have a moral compass at all, and they just are in it for the toxicity.
See or generalize as like politics as being is just like being angry, unhappy, and like petty online, and it may dissuade people who may otherwise be motivated.
Yeah, well, I mean, for example, to touch on what Henry just said, with the Destiny example, I'm someone who until recently was pretty unfamiliar with Destiny. We talked about the, debate between Jordan Peterson and Destiny that took place a month or so ago. Ironically enough, when we watched that debate, I was way more sympathetic with Destiny than was with Jordan Peterson, but said a couple things that Destiny's audience really didn't like. His audience is not a good advertisement for him as a serious person. But people in our audience, people that I like, even kind of push me. Some of our friends on Discord were like, "Hey, Michael, you should check this out. He's a little hyperbolic, but he makes some good points." But then as soon as I see him just like jokingly saying the N-word, it's like, I don't want to date. Why would I take you seriously? Because if you're doing that, I don't trust, your motive. Now, I'll maybe come back to this. I have a section pulled up from Plato's Republic. In particular, I have Alain Badiou's translation, and then that was translated from the French by Kenneth Reinhardt and Susan Spitzer. Alain Badiou, a French philosopher I like a lot, rewrote Plato's Republic in more modern language. And I was reading some of this.
This is, by the way, if you spend a lot of time online, if you spend a lot of time on Twitter, if you spend a lot of time on Reddit, unfortunately, you won't recognize this attitude. But that is the overwhelming majority of people. When they see you behave like a edgy 14-year-old, okay, they just immediately will be like, you are a pathetically unserious person. That is the norm and attitude. And you should remember that. And I think fans of this kind of edge should also recognize that and maybe re-examine their own perspective, re-examine their own attitudes in general. What? Doors open. Is it not? Oh, shit. There it is. My mom is texting me saying, open the door, please. There's an Amazon package for you.
And maybe we'll get to this in a little bit. And I was reading it to remind myself, because there are people on YouTube and in the streaming space who will reference Socrates and the Socratic method to give a structural justification for their style of debating. But I think that what they miss out on is there's a motive underneath that structure, and the motive is the seeking out of truth, justice, and the good. And in reading through Socrates debating with young people, there's a care and there's a strategy and there's a desire to get someplace that I don't see in a lot of the online debating spaces. Now, in one sense, is it fair to hold, Twitch and Kick and YouTube streamers to the standards of Socrates? In a sense, no. But in
This is a funny take. I wonder if D will come to regret his conduct one day when he has kids. Brother, it might shock you to your very core. He already has a child who's like fully conscious too. Not even like a baby. You might not, you might be shocked to find out that that man who is almost 40 years old, who's behaving like a child online, already has a child and 2 divorces under his belt. He even said he was sympathetic at first to Density, and then his rabid fan base decided they didn't like something he said, and he got hate rated by them in one of his streams. Those freaks turn off any and all normies with how gross they are. Yeah. But no, it must have been me. I'm pulling the fucking puppet strings here.
in another sense, people are asking to be taken that seriously, and they're claiming that their style of debate and what they are doing can have a real political and ethical effect. And if we're going to break down, and this is maybe unfair of me to say because I do know a lot less about one of the people I'm about to reference, but all I know, someone that lives in the city of Los Angeles, where Hasan Piker lives, there are multiple instances in which I have seen or heard or whatever that he's on the ground showing solidarity and participating in political and labor actions that are largely on the side of a just and egalitarian spirit. And whether that is supporting, striking union workers in Los Angeles, bringing pizzas to protesting students at UCLA, I think that when I see things like that, and then I watch someone like Hasan participating in any sort of debate, I think to myself, like, this is someone who, regardless of rhetoric, seems to have made clear in an active way what their social and political principles are and how those motivate things. And as someone who is, at the end of the day, a good materialist, that is what matters, and I think that's what colors things. On the other hand, if someone is just like using the N-word and talking about gangbangs, that makes me take them a little bit less seriously. But of course, that's just one person's opinion. Guillermo in the chat said, would it matter if one person with bad motives and one person with good motives said the same thing? I still think it would, because it would just like make you, how do I say this? To me, it would make me wonder, what is the motive? Because like people say, for example, there's that guy, his name's like Jackson something. I don't even care to say his last name. He's like an alt-right guy, total little shit, who has transitioned his online persona to seem like it's like about Gaza and solidarity, but he's really just an anti-Semitic little twerp. And he says things formally that are the same things you might see, an activist say, but he is saying them to get engagement online to kind of like push, white nationalist narratives. So I think that it is important to, people are saying the person's name in the chat. I'm not even going to say it because I think he's trash. Now, and I guess the last thing I'll say, and we'll bring on our guest to talk a little bit more about this, is I also think there's a difference as well when we look at sort of online debates. A thing I see a lot when I watch these is people taking turns saying like, here's a fact. Well, here's a fact. But here's a fact. But according to this data, and what you don't see is like the interrogation of ideas. Because when you look at Plato's Republic, people say to Socrates stuff like, but here's a fact. And Socrates is like, cool, great. So let's work backwards from there. Like, what are the assumptions underlying that fact? Why do we think this is true? And if we can find or locate that fundamental truth in that assumption or that fact, what happens when we broaden that out? In just one example here, the Republic is motivated by the question of what is justice. And there's a point at which Socrates is like, okay, let's zoom out then. If we really want to see what justice is, let's start by inventing a city. Let's start from the ground up, and then we'll see where justice is. He doesn't tell these people to shut the fuck up because they're idiots. He steps back and explores the motive behind ideas, So yeah, if you're with us live, again, this is Wisecrack live on May 22nd. If you're with us after the fact, glad that you're here as well. Would also love to hear what you think. So whether you're on YouTube or Spotify, you can always leave comments and ask questions after the fact. Just a reminder that later in the show, we're going to be doing our new advice segment. We don't have a name for that segment yet. We'll try to come up with one. But if you want some advice, if you need some thoughts on something, hit us up at wisecracklive666@gmail.com. We're still talking about debate. Thank you for the active chat. As always, I want to bring in Michael Luxembourg now. You guys know Lux. He's, one of the main creative forces behind everything we do here at Wisecrack, as well as a creative force in the improv, comedy, wrestling, creative scene in Austin, Texas, and does a lot of other stuff at our cool parent company that we like. And Lux, glad to have you here. I assume we're bringing him in. And wanted to talk to Lux about this because Lux is someone who is a very smart person. And Lux is smart in a cool way that I'm not smart in. And I'll tell you maybe one reason, if we can interrogate my motives, a reason I've always been suspect about debate is because I'm bad at it. I'm someone that needs to step back and like consider ideas, and I notice things. I don't know if any of you are like this, where you're in an argument with someone and you leave, and 10 minutes later you're like, I should have said. Well, Lux is the sort of person who says the thing right in the moment. There's also someone who's been a debate coach. Lux, you're here.
Yeah, I certainly am.
Okay, so let's start with this, Lux. Tell me a little bit, and tell everyone who's here, what is your background as someone that not just is like a smart dude, but that is formally participated in debate?
Yeah. So when I was in high school, I was, I think, the 6th or 7th ranked debater in America.
Whoa!
When I was a senior in high school, and then actually, this is also how I got this job. I got a scholarship to college to do this, or to do debate stuff, to be the debate coach, the guy who had recruited me. So I didn't want to participate in the activity anymore because they had sort of boned me on that. And then my sophomore year of college, they hired me as an assistant coach for the new coaches who were there, and that's actually how I met Alec Opperman, former Wisecrack.
Godfather of Wisecrack.
Yeah, former Wisecrack writer. He was debating at the new school, even though he's older than me. But he was debating at the new school, and he would always debate the kids I was coaching, and I would always tech them out with really interesting arguments, and he would win because he was clever. And we got to talking, so I'd be like, "Oh, you did a really good job answering this argument." And Alec would be like, "Well, it was a pretty cool kind of thing, kind of argument you guys came up with." We started just talking about that, and emailing arguments back and forth and chatting that way, and that's how we became friends. And that's how I ended up here. So yeah, then I coached 3 years of college debate and debated 4 years in high school at a pretty high level. And then instead of pursuing debate after college, decided to go make videos instead.
Hell yeah. So when you were participating in debate, I wonder, like, what did you, when you started debating in a serious way, what balance of motive was like, I want to be the smartest boy, I want to spend time exploring ideas, I want to understand argumentative structure in a formal way? Like, what would you say is your motive for getting into it?
Oh boy. Okay, so this is not going to reflect well on me.
No, it's okay, but we understand. We all grow as people, so it's...
Well, so I was a freshman in high school. My brother, I was a top 10 national debater. My brother was decisively #1 in his time of doing it. He was one of the best to do it. And so I initially wasn't going to. I was just going to be a theater kid in high school. That was sort of my trajectory. And the debate team was like, "Look, we need someone to come to this tournament with us. Your brother did it. Would you just mind trying it out? We'll fly you to LA because there's it's a tournament in LA."
They were like, there is a whole family of debaters. They're like, we need another man to do the job.
Pay for you to go to Disneyland. If you'll just debate at this one tournament. So I did that because I wanted to go to Disneyland, and I did better than I expected. And some of the older people on the debate team were like, "Hey, you're good at this. Here's a weird secret. And we can get into this detail if we feel like maybe this is for a different stream." They were like, "Did you know that all the good debaters all party together and people will give you free drugs and beers and shit if you're just hanging out?" And I was like 15, and I was like, "Well, that's a good deal." So then I was like, "I guess I should get good at this so I can get all this free stuff and party with these weird smart people." So then I decided to do it, and it turned out that I was creative and good at it, and then I started to have fun being kind of a trolly little weirdo, and that's sort of how it happened. Because I mean, I guess to talk about the intellectual element of it, debate is a game with rules, and I, as Burns and Henry are probably both very aware, am a rules-averse person. I don't like them.
You're not a rules guy.
I take great pleasure in breaking them whenever possible. And so a lot of my debate approach and what I enjoyed about it was playing the game of debate in as tricky and truly and rule-skirting way as possible. This is why there are people to this day who will say that my brother and I ruined the activity of policy debate because my brother started this using rhetorical critiques written by people based on works like Foucault, Chalupka, Baudrillard to make arguments about the assumptions of people's debate propositions. And I took that one step in a different direction where I use those arguments to critique the idea of doing debate or having debates. And so basically what we would do is cheat at debate, and the other team would either have to let us cheat or say, "You're cheating, that's bad." And we would go, no, cheating is good. And that would be how we would win. Either by cheating and they'd let us get away with it, or they tried to stop us from cheating, and that was like the debate we wanted to have, was cheating good or bad.
Wow. Well, at some point you need to write a book about what it was like to be one of the bad boys of debate. So here's a question I have. So obviously we've been talking about debate in the context of, Hasan Piker's recent comments, some of the debate culture stuff around destiny and that sort of thing. And I think we've been talking about, and something I know that we've talked about before, Lux, is...
By the way, what he's talking about is structured debate, right? Like policy debate, student debate, like college debate is very different than the type of debate that pops off online. What he's talking about is literally a format like a sport where, I mean, it's there are rules, there are like logical fallacies and things like of that nature that you engage with will immediately be moderated, will be regulated. There is no such process online, as evidenced by, I would say, Lex Fridman, who hosts a lot of these debates and just kind of sits there. There's no, like, it's all logical fallacies, as a matter of fact, in an online debate. It's about who can do as many logical fallacies while trying to rationalize it as though it's actually super logical for them to engage in these, like, fallacious arguments. Another thing that I regularly talk about with respect to online debate.
The importance, or maybe unimportance, of having a set of first principles or a set of values that one is motivated by when debating. So could you speak to that a little bit? I'm curious what you think about the relationship between sort of the values of the debater and the context and the value of the debate itself, if that makes sense.
Well, yeah, so this is sort of so let me put this. This is sort of my fundamental problem with online debate stuff, right? And I think Destiny actually inadvertently. So, do you guys talk about that video where Hasan was like, Destiny played the Hasan clip where Hasan's like, debates are stupid, and,
yes.
and Destiny's like, what the fuck, and like has like a series of microstrokes.
That was our jumping off point today. Was a series of microstrokes. In particular, the idea that, like,
yeah, that is actually, contrary to what Destiny thinks, that is actually complimentary to my opinion, which is that, like, the esteemed online debate lord literally fucking losing his mind and freaking out and then immediately activating what he perceives as a series of ad hominems is exactly why online discourse is so fucking stupid.
Like, you know, Destiny's point seemed to be that debate has a, like, directly political effect, and debate is the thing that shapes politics and yada, yada, yada.
Right. So the problem, so he makes this argument when he's having his, like, weird panic attack, is that the foundation of America was this question of, like, debating politics, debating ideas. And we figured out how to do government. The degree to which that's true is dubious, but even if you assume it's totally true, that wasn't happening in front of an audience on the internet, right? And so the people who are doing these debates online aren't drilling down to first principles and aren't conveying a series of justified premise argument positions. They're articulating sort of a brand identity, right? And they're trying to connect with their audience directly. And so while it is good to argue about ideas, I think we can vouch for this, that, like, a lot of the best Wisecrack videos are like you and me and Amanda arguing over, like, what's the best way to get at this concept we all think is interesting or whatever. And, like, that hones the idea and makes it stronger. I think that that's obviously true. I think that is good. Henry and I will argue about camera compositions when we're making movies. Like, it's important to do that stuff. But we're not doing that performatively. And it's the performative aspect that then makes these online debates a lot less rigorous, right? You see this all the time. Destiny, I'm just going to go to because he's a famous guy and a perpetrator of this particular crime pretty regularly, will make factual claims, or factual claims, air quotes, pretty regularly that aren't true, but that aren't true or are without context. And when he does that, right, that's not an attempt to suss out a greater knowledge point. It's purely a persuasive project. And so the point of those debates isn't to figure out the best position or the best idea. It is to persuasively perform, right? To go back to my debate history, it's very stupid to make a policy proposal.
Dude, of course, immediately. I don't know how these guys ever find out, but, like, anywhere being mentioned, his fan base will find it and they will start swarming like a bunch of flies to shit, okay? Like a bunch of maggots crawling all over it like a fucking hive mind. I mean, Destiny literally has his first principles published on a site, and the reaction to Hasan was over Hasan engaging in the debate purgatory he decries.
That the United States government...
Yeah, his first principles are whatever suits me at any given moment. Here's my cheat code. I'm an egoist.
Free all the aliens in Area 51, right? That's like a silly thing to present as a policy proposal. But because we couched it all these weird arguments about knowing the other and this weird Zimmerman article about what it means to meet aliens and how it would create universal empathy, like it became persuasive. That doesn't mean it was a good idea. That was are you fucking kidding me? Dumb as shit. It's stupid to imagine Congress having that conversation, but it doesn't mean that. But the we would win because it's persuasive, right? And again, this isn't to say that these debates don't have some degree of educational value, but the fact that they're entertainment first kind of undercuts this idea that they're this fundamental pursuit of higher knowledge, right? And the other thing that these things are missing always is like a moderator or a judge, right? Like one thing about policy debate, as stupid as I think it is that there was a judge who would like vet the arguments and who would read the evidence and see if it actually says what they say it says, and would evaluate and adjudicate arguments against each other, etc. Right? That was a job that they had. That doesn't happen on a Destiny versus Jordan Peterson debate. All that happens in that debate is their audiences watch and just react to what their guy says. There's no arbitration happening.
Well, and it makes me wonder as well. Like, for example, we could use the, Destiny and Jordan Peterson debate as an example. What would?
Yeah, but Hasan is a mouthpiece for Hamas, says Jamie Wallach.
What would a valuable debate look like? And I think, in a sense, in internet spaces, whenever there's a debate that gets a lot of attention and hype, it's person on this side, debates person on this side, diametrically opposed, whatever. And this person says a thing, and this person says opposite thing, and this person says opposite thing. And at the end of it, it's like, you choose who won. To me, at least, what would be much more interesting is like this person who, has one set of ideas, debates this person who's like largely in their wheelhouse of those things. To me, that's way more interesting at an intellectual level. I guess it's like not interesting from an entertainment perspective. We could even think here of the Slavoj Žižek and Jordan Peterson debate. I've watched so many, debates or conversations over the years with Slavoj Žižek and guest. And if it's Slavoj Žižek and, psychoanalytic or Marxist thinker that disagrees with him, those can be really interesting conversations, because then you have two people that force each other to better articulate the differences of their positions. Or you see Žižek and whoever, clearly articulate why the unconscious is actually this, or why materialism is actually that. Nothing was more boring than the Žižek and Jordan Peterson debate, because there was no real dialogue or pushing towards ideas together. So I just wonder, like, would like a good intellectually grounded debate even be entertaining? Would it be something people would even want to watch?
I think it can be, right? But I think that okay, that's a good way to put this. I think that you have a version of debate that exists now where the act of debating is the entertaining hook. The thing that people click into is that they are doing a debate. I think that you could have an entertaining debate by having the hook be the topic, right? And the depth of the topic becomes entertaining. The connection between the topic and the stuff becomes interesting. And that's fun. But if the act of debating is the main thing, then all that's happening is the performance of the debate as qua performance, right? That's the only thing that becomes important. And then the idea of intellectual rigor becomes very secondary, right?
Jamie Wallach, look, Alex Jones and Hasan are not different at all. I was a Hasan head for like 4 years. He got so horny, he's not even typing it out correctly. Recently got out due to his coverage and playing defense for Hamas. October 7 lever. If he had been an actual Hasna head for 4 years, he would have heard me say the exact same things in 2021. There you go. There's one right there. I don't know if he's actually an October 7 lever or simply someone portraying themselves as an October 7 lever while just being a hater.
I mean, you can see this with Destiny and that Norm Finkelstein. There's that Norm Finkelstein clip with Destiny where Norm Finkelstein is like, effectively, I forget the exact wording, but he's just like, you are in a room with 3 people who have been studying this conflict for decades and you read Wikipedia. Like, what are we doing here? Right? And that's sort of the vibe with a lot of the Destiny stuff. Even some of the Hasan stuff. I think Hasan does a little bit of a better job prepping himself on shit, but he gets stuff wrong all the time. Peterson, obviously, like all these guys, Ethan Klein, etc. They all sort of, and I don't think we necessarily, like, I don't think that's necessarily bad. Like, whatever, watch your TV show, man. Like, I watched a fucking soccer anime 24/7. Like, do whatever you want. That's totally cool. But the audience, there's this conflation, I think, because debate is supposed to be a smart people thing. That when these people have this debate, they're engaging intellectually in a rigorous and compelling way. But that's not actually true when you like look at the merits of the stuff, right? I mean, like the Zizek Peterson debate is such a good example. It's basically Peterson misexplaining stuff from Marx or Zizek, and then Zizek re-explaining it in a weird Zizek way, and then going on to the next thing.
Mm-hmm.
And that's not really.
What is the soccer anime? It's called Blue Lock. I suspect he's talking about Blue Lock, or maybe Tsubasa, Captain Tsubasa.
A particularly useful approach, right? Like there is a degree of necessary analytic work and intellectual rigor that to make these debates, intellectually meaningful, as opposed to what they end up being, which is like basically weird reality TV shows about like the strangest people on the internet.
Yeah. I mean, something kind of related to what you said, a thing I struggle with sometimes, and this is relevant to the Finkelstein example. There are times where like I am more drawn to debates featuring people with serious backgrounds in the subject being debated. I recognize maybe the risk of that is falling into a sort of elitism, or of course, and we all know this, like institutions themselves can reduplicate and reinforce, ideological beliefs that are not good and can just get parroted by academics or experts. But then at the same time, when it comes to like Destiny or whoever, there's people who I'm just kind of like, man, I just don't know if I want to. I'm between the two minds of like, I struggle to take you as seriously because I know that you do not have a background in this thing. At the same time, then, but isn't it more egalitarian to, leave space for non-experts? I know that's a very reductive way to put it, but I imagine other people maybe have that feeling as well.
I think that's fair. I think here's the thing. People use rhetorical terms like appeal to authority or whatever in a way that is very silly, right? For instance, in this case, right, like the point's not that Destiny couldn't possibly know more about a thing than a professor of the thing. The point is that he doesn't, right?
Yeah.
It's not a question of the authority imbued by the position or by institutional recognition. It's engaging with the material things that they are saying and comparing them to actual scholarship and evidence.
Yeah.
Right. Like that's the value, right? And that's what you have to do, right? So to be egalitarian about it doesn't just mean anyone can say anything. It means that you don't assume that a guy with institutional recognition is correct per se because of that institutional recognition or because of that social position or whatever. Like you have to account for being that's at play, but you also have to like do rigorous critical analysis. Like you can't, like if someone were to be like, Lux, we'll pay you $10,000 to go on the news and debate this stock market guy about the future of IBM prices, like you'd have it's not the reason you would listen to him, not me, is not because they are an IBM representative. It's because I don't know jack shit about the stock market.
Well,
right?
And you can even imagine right in that example, a world where you as a smart person that's good at using computer could spend a couple days, learn a lot of facts about what's currently happening. What you couldn't do and what you couldn't learn in like an Adderall fueled research session is how those markets work and function in the way that someone who studied those things for years could, or the underlying, epistemological assumptions of the field itself. There's no shortcut for that.
Yeah, like that's exactly it, right? Like maybe that was just an example, because whatever. But like you, the question isn't pre-earmarked authority. It's legitimate. It's legitimately earned intellectual recognition or intellectual clarity, right? And I think there's this conflation, and I know this happens. Lord, I've seen this happen in the Wisecrack Discord and a million other Discords all the time, where I'll just be like, "This guy's dumb." Sorry, don't care. What's he got to say? People are like, well, why not? And it's like because like read the shit that he says, doesn't make any fucking sense or whatever, right? Like no one is obligated to assume every position someone takes is good or bad. Like you just interrogate it and like you can draw these conclusions. If to use Destiny's example, if for instance Destiny's analysis of power were historically grounded in a way that isn't contrary to the vast majority of contemporary scholarship, I wouldn't say that he's wrong about shit. But like it often is. And that's sort of, this is true for a lot of these guys, right? Like this is just generally true that like to be well informed about something as complicated as like even the history of Welsh bards, right? Like I know a little bit about that, but like if I were to talk to an actual scholar, they've been studying it for decades, right? Like they've read the primary source material, they know what's going on. And so there might be bad scholars, right? Like that lady who wrote the Qing Dynasty book that ended up being all lies. Like I could probably be the more intellectually viable person in a debate about the Qing Dynasty because she just made all her shit up. But like, so she doesn't get institutional authority for that. But an actual scholar who knew the shit that you're talking about would turn my ass inside out in that discussion because I only know a little bit about the Qing Dynasty.
Well, there's something that came up in in chat from our friend Alex Butler, who said, could a lot of this be very reductively described as non-experts speaking authoritatively in a way they might not even realize is in bad faith?
Yeah, 100%.
Yeah.
That's the Dunning-Kruger effect, right? That's what that's called. The like when you know just enough about a thing to think you understand it and not understand all the amounts of it that you don't know.
Mm-hmm.
Right? When you know enough about a thing to think you understand it, but not enough to understand the parts that you don't understand.
Yeah.
I think that's the Dunning-Kruger effect. I don't remember if that's correct. I get it confused with the Hudsucker proxy a lot of the time. But yeah,
and this is like
absolutely correct. I don't necessarily think Destiny. There are things Destiny does make me like iffy about him as a guy, but I don't think the way that he debates makes me think he's a bad person. I just think that he's like doing a silly thing, and he's doing it in a silly way, and there's not an infrastructure or a socially framed methodology to push back on it, really.
Well, and I also think, like, in that context too, if I am someone, for example, who's a famous streamer and I'm really interested in ideas, but I'm a non-expert, would I rather use my clout and connections to debate people, or would I want to use it to bring actual experts in those fields on, ask them questions, maybe push back?
Yeah. And Divorcelli fans will say that Divorcelli has done this as well, while simultaneously saying, I don't do this. When I actually do this, the difference is Divorcelli has already made up his mind without doing the reading, and then will, with the help of his audience, find individuals that he did not previously know about, like Benny Morris, to bring on board so that he could be like, see, there's at least one expert that we have that agrees with my post hoc rationalizations.
Back at times, but use it as an opportunity to explore ideas. And I think that's the thing, right? Because it's not as good of a thumbnail to be like, famous streamer sits down with French philosopher Catherine Malibu to talk about neuroscience and Kant. But to me, that would exhibit a much higher level of curiosity and interest in ideas.
Why he say you get things wrong all the time? You always source your research? Who said I get things wrong all the time?
Someone who can only conceive of exploring ideas in an adversarial way. And I'm going to say something, guys. It's been a few episodes since we had to put on the unconscious toxic masculinity alarm. So, we can insert that sound effect right now. But a lot of this too, I just think of, and again, I'm being toxic here, is that it's just like, maybe dudes who like didn't do sports when they were younger, who wish that they could, who as 40-year-olds with money feel like they can now win and be tough.
I think there's definitely a chunk of that. I think there's also, I think that's definitely part of it. I not like couldn't do sports, but that there's like a claim to power in a certain way.
Yeah.
Everyone wants to tag in.
More beyond sports, it's just like wanting that high school sense of popularity. Everybody wants to be living in Riverdale.
Yeah. And again, not to break everything down to that, but we can all be slightly psychoanalytic here and acknowledge that people are driven by desires. Some we acknowledge, some that we don't acknowledge, some that we're not consciously aware of. And of course, I think especially with men on the internet, we do see a lot of reduplication or repetition of a certain type of masculine performativity.
Yeah, I mean, okay,
which is fun.
It's like someone in the chat, I think it's already scrolled up too far for me to know who they were. Sorry, but they made a claim that was like, look, you can say Destiny's wrong about masculine literature, but like, where's the specific points? And that's a totally fair point, because it should, like, speaking generalities is like the kind of intellectual failure about which I'm talking. So to that point, right, like Destiny's a good example of this, because Destiny claims to support sort of socialist or individual liberation on the economic level, but also thinks like cops are good and the Democratic Party is a functioning liberal entity, right? Even though materially on the ground, those things are opposed to each other. But there's no one on the streams who is going to point this out, right? Who's going to poke at this, unless it's like a Hasan type guy who has his own series of crazy assumptions about how stuff should work. Right.
Yeah, so, and people in the chat, I see people bring up like the propagandist thing, but for those of you who are just showing up, earlier in the stream, we did watch or listen to a big chunk from Hasan Piker's interview on the Wired podcast, and in it, he straight up says like he 100% takes advantage of debate culture and clickiness to draw people in to hopefully then turn it into a discussion.
He gets it exactly. I'm honest. I will tell you what my fucking opinions are. I will tell you to a fault what I believe, which many people sometimes perceive as weakness or will try to exploit as weakness. And beyond that, a lot of people also use the shield of objectivity when they are not objectively looking at a situation at all to claim like what they are saying is just simply an accurate assessment of facts when it is anything but that.
Of bigger ideas. So, you know, all that to say is I think there's a fairness there.
And also, like, what does propagandist mean? Like, obviously everyone who's like articulating a social or political position is going to articulate their social or political position, right? Like, who cares if someone says they're a propagandist? It's all fucking propaganda. Like,
yeah.
The thing that's bad about propaganda in theory, right, is when it's an intentional occlusion of facts or occlusion of position or occlusion of articulation, and that's like hidden and hidden away, right, as opposed to explicit. Right, that's the propagandistic problem, but it's also not actually like propaganda is not a value judgment. Like it's just a kind of thing.
It's a descriptor of a category. Yeah. Okay, so
this guy though, the Master of Infinity, that he's dishonest. Like he's trying to debate them on the term propagandist when they completely understand exactly what I mean when I say that. With me,
I want to wind down here. You know, I don't think we've solved it all today, guys. I don't think we fixed the whole thing. I guess maybe the final thing for us to quickly hit, maybe I'll start with Henry here, is do we think that formal debate has a useful role in online discourse, especially in online discourse around ideas and politics? Henry, what do you think?
That word formal is doing a lot of work there as far as like the means by which it's like platformed, processed, and presented. Is there like a moderator or referee? I do think like if you're engaging in like programs that do like good faith debate on topics of interest that, you know, are more about furthering knowledge and furthering the research, yeah, that's cool. That's helpful. I'm always open. Like, I'm not going to say no, don't do it. If it happens online, it'll be like now where I just...
Yell at me all you want, but why the fuck are we listening to two white dudes talk about the ethics of saying the N-word? Dude, are you trying to do a bait at 4:42 or something? Because that is literally not what they're talking about at all. They covered a statement that I said that I made about debates. It has nothing to do with the N-word at all. These guys are not discussing that at all. Why are you not even listening? You're not even listening. You're just fucking chirping.
Don't listen to it if it's annoying.
Yeah. Lux, what do you think?
I think it's fine. Like, do the shit you think is fun. I think it has a value in terms of theoretically, right? A well-done debate has the value of forcing people to articulate positions in response to pushback, which I think is a good thing. The problem is this idea that it's a way to settle or solve or like prove a position abstracted from the performative element of it, right? Like that's the part that is a problem. I think having debates about stuff is probably good. It's useful to push ideas against each other. That's cool. The problem is when people treat them as either finding an answer or in and of themselves, like intellectually rigorous by default, right? I think there has to be a degree of audience-based critical thinking about the quality of the arguments that are being made and about the sort of thing. And I think that you sort of can never conceptualize the gestalt of an issue into a particular into a particular debate. But I think they're good to do. They seem fine.
Yeah, I'll give my quick final take. Yeah, which my very simple take on this is debates can be good. A couple things though. We as an audience need to understand what's really going on. We need to be honest with ourselves about, am I watching a debate that's solely here for entertainment in kind of a kayfabe way? If you acknowledge that, great. The other important thing is that the people doing the debate know what they're doing and that they're honest about what they're doing. If that is the case, then great. This gets bad when people, performing these debates are dishonest with themselves and their audience, and when an audience is potentially ignorant or dishonest with themselves about what those things are doing. And I also think that for all of us, we just got to ask, what are the underlying principles motivating this person? But we didn't fix it all today. But guys, I want to thank Michael Luxembourg so much for taking